For business leaders, successfully adopting AI means clearly identifying practical use cases, overcoming deployment hurdles, and generating measurable outcomes. Today, we'll dive into these critical themes: practical AI implementation, reliable deployment strategies, and operational transformations with AI with Jozef Petro, CEO and co-founder of Sudolabs. Jozef has advised over 100 companies on AI implementation, earning recognition from Deloitte and Forbes for his practical, impactful solutions. Jozef, great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Very excited to be here.
Before we jump in, could you share your journey from software engineer and product manager to CEO of Sudolabs? What led you to focus on helping businesses build practical AI solutions?
Yeah, definitely. So, I always, even while I was still an engineer, was very obsessed about very practical sides of the business. So even though I was just observing from everything from the software engineering perspective, I was always trying to help companies beyond that. That started with product, right? So first, when I transitioned from engineering to product management, that's really really where I got much closer to the business operations itself. And, from product management, it was just one step to jump into also operational positions, financial planning, staffing, and all the different aspects of the business and sales as well. And that's really where I started thinking how that can be optimized, how that can be automated. And also that's how I progressed through Sudolabs. And as we started engaging not only with startup clients, but also with enterprise customers, then, I was thinking, okay, we might be able to help these companies in these other many fields. And that can be done very efficiently with deploying AI. Back in the days, very simple NLP models, and these days, agentic AI and different AI workflows that we can discuss later. But that's really something how I progress through these roles and.
And who does Sudolabs focus on serving? What types of businesses? What industries? What sizes?
These days, usually we work with larger SMBs and smaller enterprise customers. So let's say anywhere from 200 people organization up to 40,000. But still maintaining small startup client base, because we, in the very beginning, started working with startups and then progressed through and into up markets to SMBs and then enterprises.
And we're going to walk through an example of your work, but maybe to give people a sense of what you do, what are some representative engagements? What are the types of ways in which you help your SMB and smaller enterprise clients use AI to solve problems?
A lot of the times there is a client who just wants to implement AI into their business, but they have no idea what to do. And that's usually when we start with AI discovery or AI strategy phase engagement. In those cases, we really help identify what are the best opportunities for this client, what are the use cases they should work on, what are the models they should deploy, and we start from the ground up. In other cases or in other scenario, there are already pre-identified use cases by the client, and we are just helping this client understand the feasibility, the technical feasibility that stands behind these use cases to help prioritize the implementation.
And many SMBs and enterprises struggle to identify what problems are suitable for an AI solution. You just talked a little bit about your discovery process. How would you recommend leaders clearly identify those high impact AI opportunities?
Usually it starts with a little bit of a business consulting exercise, I would say. So you really want to look through those most impactful processes or those vital processes for your business. So let's say with marketplace company, it can be procurement, or it can be, let's say, validation of external vendors to be able to expand the vendor portfolio. So let's say just based on the contribution to your business, you identify these processes, and then you start breaking down and understanding what's happening. Or most of the times there is a person who understands this specific process end to end, and you want to sit down with this person and bring somebody who understands the models that are available or the technologies that are available in AI very well, and can help basically identify what part of this process can be automated or is feasible to be automated fairly easily with what's available out there in terms of technology.
And are there some criteria within these workflows or processes that would lend them to be potentially solved by AI? If I'm running a business, I have lots of processes, so lots of important processes too. Are there some frameworks we can use to initially identify a short list of potential problems to solve or automate with AI?
So I think that it also starts with the data, right? So ideally, you could start with the process that requires working with a lot of these days even unorganized data, and then requires a lot of very, repetitive manual labor. So that would be a good definition or a good area to start with. So let's say you need to review a lot of emails and then perform some specific action. It requires some level of sophistication to decide on what decision needs to be made based off the email that you received. And let's say you process many of these emails, or you are an insurance company and you process many insurance claims. Obviously, that's not really simple decision, but with the available models that are out there right now, you are able to process this unstructured text-based data to actually make some action, right? And this is really the perfect example of a problem. Usually companies have you can find many different analogies of this, decision making based of the text input, and that can be used to identify, I would say, quite a lot of those most prone areas to automation.
Yeah. You talked about feasibility too, and I imagine that many leaders hesitate due to uncertainty around the feasibility or practicality of an AI solution. What signals should an organization look for to determine whether it's ready to implement AI?
These days, really, I think many of these signals were already transmitted. The developments in AI in the past 12 months, should be really a strong signal that every business, and I would say at any scale these days, can actually or should actually invest into adopting AI. And it's really about being brave to do it, and brave to run experiments to really see what AI is capable of, and what these models, especially LLMs, in the past 6 months, are capable of. And that can be done by building very, very simple prototypes and just testing out the models as they exist. You can just open ChatGPT and try it out to see and simulate a certain workflow and see how that would perform on its baseline level. And obviously you can improve it next by techniques like prompt engineering and like fine tuning, but just to understand the baseline, which is already there to support quite a big chunk. So I think Signal is already there.
When it comes to feasibility and assessing technical feasibility, I think that's one of Sudolabs' strengths. Can you describe your process for assessing whether a solution can solve a specific business problem?
Yeah, I said it before. As I said, like it starts with just breaking down and identifying those use cases from the business perspective. Obviously, if you have as a business owner, and most businesses know their operations very well, so they can very easily tell, like, if we can save 10% on this specific process, what ROI it brings to us as a business. So what we mostly add value is then taking these use cases and actually testing it with the models available. So ideally, you as a business owner or as an executive, you should bring somebody or find somebody in your team or bring somebody external from the outside to help you test the models on some of the specific tasks related to these processes. That really tells you and gives you sort of a tech feasibility rate to this matrix. So at the end, you would want to end up with these use cases in a business ROI and technical feasibility matrix, and you would rather want to start with those use cases that are the most feasible and that are the most easy to deploy. So obviously accounting for integration into your existing systems. But I think the feasibility in this day and age of AI models is really testing different AI models, how they perform on their baseline, which can be done in the matter of days or in the matter of hours sometimes, to assess like what's the quality of the output of the model. And you can then very quickly tell how feasible the specific use case is or how quickly we can get it to production. So it takes, let's say, 3 days to tell which model we should use and how well it will perform after some fine-tuning or prompt engineering. Based on that, you would give it or somebody who brings that expertise would give it the score on this table to help you pick the right use case to start with, and it should be really the most feasible one.
Yeah. I guess the other part of the equation is an ROI. How do you help organizations ensure that their AI projects are aligned with real business objectives and deliver an ROI?
So I think it should start. It should start very, very simple, and as I said, like working with those business critical processes. So working on the core area of the business and finding those use cases around this area and making sure that you are able to integrate pretty well. So you are not going to be faced with heavy onboarding of your existing employees, let's say, because if there is an automation that is evaluated by the model in the back of your CRM, so you keep using your CRM, you keep using the same environment, and your employees are used with, then you are not facing some potential productivity losses that you need to account for when deploying the AI solution, and you are just focusing on efficiency gains that you bring by automating some specific task within the workflow.
And speaking of efficiency gains, you shared with me an example of Sudo's work with a wind power plant client. I'd love to walk through that case study. Maybe we could start at the beginning. What problem did they come to you with?
Wind power plant operator companies usually mostly deal with field maintenance, and the uptime is really a key factor of quality and business efficiency of this operator, because their core responsibility is to make sure that the uptime is as high as possible, so there are not any productivity losses in the electricity generation. So we started looking at how we can prevent downtimes and also how we can optimize the repair and how we can basically shorten the time of repair, which essentially later leads also to lower downtimes and preventing the downtimes. But it always starts with understanding the repair process, how long it takes, and why there are some anomalies that happens in some cases that some of the turbines are non-operating for weeks. So we started looking into these examples, and we're trying to figure out how we can make this repair field maintenance and repair process much more efficient and collect some data in the process to do some predictive maintenance exercise and help to identify some incidents upfront.
So they came to you with the desire to reduce downtime, and that's a function really of, I guess, properly identifying when projects need to be, or these turbines need to be repaired, and then repairing as efficiently as possible. What was the first step you took? It sounds like you were given a bunch of data. What did you do with that data?
Yeah, so we started looking at field maintenance reports, and funnily enough, we discovered that these reports are also lacking some significant details. So we started basically investigating, because as you said, like the first thought was that we can start with the data science work pretty much immediately and build predictive analysis models based on the data that we have from maintenance reports. But as I said, we had to first increase the quality of the maintenance reports. Therefore, we started looking into the maintenance process itself and started collecting some of the data points from how the repair is actually done, how long it takes, and that's when we discovered that we can actually help unlock some efficiency in the repair or maintenance process itself and also automate the reporting. So we started with that as a first step, actually.
And what did you see in terms of the repair process that was inefficient?
So one example was that even though they were receiving some data points from the turbines, because as you know, these are a lot of the times IoT devices, so you get data points from vibrations and other and different error codes. So what we discovered is that a lot of the times when the field maintenance worker comes to a turbine, they don't have a part they need to be able to fix the turbine. So there is a lot of back and forth. Even though they have this part available at the warehouse, they need to order it or they need to pick it up, and then the downtime of the turbine that could be, let's say, a couple of hours becomes a couple of days or multiple times what it could be. So we started looking at, let's say, this example as well, and also discovered that most of the time technician or field maintenance workers spend researching the manuals, because those also, we have multiple types of turbines. You need to be able to interact with quite a lot of manuals as a technician, so that can take a couple of hours to just figure out what a specific error code means, or combination of error code means, or different light combination, so on and so forth. So just being able to efficiently research the manuals can, let's say, shrink the actual maintenance work by 30%, right? The time spent on site by 30%.
So two problems. One is that they don't have the parts often that they need, and so they have to go back and get them, and that creates time that's not downtime. And then the second part is that there are different turbines, and so they need to kind of look at the manual to better understand how they're going to go about fixing it ahead of time. Can you walk through with each of those problems, kind of how you solved it? How do you get the right part in someone's hand when they go to the turbine?
Yeah, so we started consuming basically all the data points available from these IoT devices and different sensors available, and connected to those specific parts. We've been able to basically build very simple vector search to be able to just pair up and suggest the likelihood and of necessary parts that are required for the proper repair. So as you can imagine, we were consuming all this data and then researching the also manuals, but just completely automatically without human intervention, to suggest the parts before the repair. So we are able to pre-diagnose automatically using a combination of LLM and vector search to search different service manuals and pair those up with the data that we are getting from the turbine to suggest the parts that are necessary for this repair. And therefore, the technician still could make a decision before being dispatched, but had the list of most likely parts needed for the repair available within the app.
And then the second problem of having to review the manual of the specific turbine, what did you do there?
So I already mentioned the app that was responsible for suggesting the specific parts. So into this app, we also integrated an experience of materials and manual search, on top of which was a conversational model. So you could basically, in a natural language, describe what's happening on site, what different factors and problems you are observing, and based of that, the model expanded your question or a problem that you described into a search query and pulled out the specific relevant information for the repair into this conversation. So the technician could just review the synthesis of the manual and then basically just dive into the specific part of the manual that was the most relevant, and making sure that he's able to review the full context of the manual as well, but just pointing this person to the right direction saved a lot of time in the process, and that was happening through conversational interface as you are used to from chat.
And so if you combine those two solutions, what did the kind of before and after look like in terms of the amount of time or downtime that was occurring versus after you deployed these solutions?
Yeah, so we are mostly measuring maintenance time reduction. So in terms of maintenance time reduction, we are able to fairly quickly in the first quarter get to higher single digits of time saved, and that translates to higher hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for like average sized power plant.
Hmm. Hmm.
So in terms of the ROI of this engagement, like this company was able to recoup the investment in a year, basically.
And how long was the process of identifying kind of the problems in the existing repair process, the design and implementation of the solutions? How long did that look like for the company?
It's 3 months.
Do you think this is a case study that's relevant for other industries or other types of companies outside of wind power?
Definitely, definitely. We were observed also different use cases as a lot of the times in manufacturing. That's where we interact a lot these days. Let's say combining different quality measurement vision models with large language models to optimize production. But really, it always the technology stack and the structure of the problem is fairly the same. So you can even build, let's say, a content pipeline for a media advertising company that's consisting of the same technology stack that we did for this use case, which, from the outside perspective is completely different, but from the technical perspective, really, really similar problem.
Interesting. We were talking earlier about agents and the buzz and noise around them. You work very closely with manufacturing organizations, small and medium-sized enterprises. What is most interesting to you right now about AI adoption?
Yeah, so as we discussed, AI agents are being deployed into production. I think what's really changed from the last year, we are moving from these cute conversational applications or customer support applications to more complex workflows. What's really exciting is that now we are combining multiple agents to cover a very, very complex process. So it's many agents that are responsible for many different tasks and are able to perform complex workflows. So this is really something that's exciting. Also, these agents becoming more reliable, or LLMs becoming more reliable and cheaper, which enables for very complex setups. Because if you really want to cover complex workflow, that means you are going to use a lot of different agents, a lot of LLMs or LLM calls, and that really helps when compute gets cheaper and the accuracy gets better because it just helps with these setups.
We talked a little bit earlier about the right approach to identifying a high potential AI solution. We want to look for problems where there's, a repetitive task, let's say. We want to understand the feasibility. What are other pitfalls that cause AI projects to be unsuccessful, and how can leaders avoid them?
I think that the big part is integration into existing org or existing tools. That's also why we are quite successful, is that a lot of the times to adopt AI, it requires getting off-the-shelf solution, requires staff training, and also the outcome is not as attractive just simply because of the fact that people are not using the tooling or are not caring enough to learn the new tooling. So really, the thing to focus on here is to integrate AI into existing tools to make sure that your workforce and your employees are using it even subconsciously on the back end of your tools. Or if you are using off the shelf or building custom tools, just make sure that the UI of this tool is excellent, because a lot of the times we are talking about how advanced these AI models are, but to take the full advantage of the model, you need to have the great user experience and user interface around the model. So just to give you an example, using ChatGPT and let's say a wrapper on top of ChatGPT is much more successful. And that's the reason why, because there is a UI interface that basically prompts the model in the backend by the user using this UI tool, and it just creates the experience that is much easier for the user to use the model. So that's really important as well. Really, this human to model integration through great user interface and model to systems integration that is automated with existing tools that people are familiar with.
For leaders who are considering their first AI initiative now, what are two practical steps that they should prioritize?
So the first, I think, is really start using what's easiest for them. So I would say if there is a tool that they can deploy very quickly to their organization, just to expose the team to this new technology, even though it might not be as successful on the end, might be a good thing, because it helps people think a bit differently, and it helps people to start being creative about their workflow, and that demands more tooling or demands more requirements, and creates creates more ideas, and that really helps. I think that's the one that comes to my mind.
Yeah. You shared a great example about how different types of AI can be used to improve the efficiency of a more traditional business like wind power. I would imagine that in more traditional industries like manufacturing, energy, and power, that AI may be considered less critical than it is in like technology industries, as an example. What do you say to leaders who come to you and feel like now's not the time to be looking at AI?
I think that um, I think everybody should, because I think it seems, at least from what I observed, there are two types of companies. One who are talking about AI a lot or how they are using it, and they actually don't. And there are companies who are almost in secret just really embracing it. And I just see these tremendous efficiency gains, and we will see, winners coming out fairly quickly in the next 6 to 12 months. So I think you might not feel it just yet, but you might not observe it on the market just yet. But really, the winners are going to surface. Once they are going to surface, it's going to be very, very quick battle on the marketplace. And I think that those winners are going to just take over completely. So I think, like, if you want to be still around in the next, remain competitive and be still around in the next 12 to 16 months, I think you really should start racing and don't stop.
It's a good place to end. Jozef, thank you for coming on Just Curious and sharing more about you, and for coming on your work and helping small and medium-sized enterprises transform their businesses with AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue.